Today's video is going to be a little different. I'm going to speak about why I believe in God, why I believe in a higher power. Growing up, I was somebody who never had any religious affiliation, never had any, association to the church, right? My family never went to church. We never really spoke about religion, but I always had this curiosity for religion, for God, for a higher power. And, in high school, I remember that I really started to get into, religion and reading the Bible and going to different churches, right? Because I always felt this higher power and I could never really put my fingerprints on it. I really did not understand what it was. And I made a recent video speaking about how I was a personal trainer. I still am a personal trainer, but how I was very lustful in nature, right? And dealing with women who were lustful as well, and just engaging, in activities and just the whole lifestyle, right? Like what I learned from that and, the things that could have happened. And on this channel, I speak consistently about destroying vices, right? Destroying your addictions, destroying your addiction to weed, alcohol, gambling, doom scrolling, gluttony, sex, porn, whatever it is, right? And I had some people who left comments saying how a lot of what I was speaking about, was biblical, and it sounded like it was coming from a religious, a spiritual realm. And I wanted to make a video that, really clarifies where my messaging comes from. I'm somebody growing up that I always had this calling, right, to a higher power. And growing up, right, when you're not a Christian or you're not a Muslim or, whatever religion, right, and you don't affiliate yourself with that religion, I believe that you can still have a sense of God within you. And for me right now in my life, I use God, I use a higher power as a source of reference. You can obviously be somebody who goes to church. You can be somebody that is spiritual and still commit sin, still do bad in the world. There's lots of people that do this. And, I believe that God, religion, whatever God you worship, whatever religion you affiliate yourself with, you should use this as a framework to live a better life. I use, the framework of destroying vices because it works for me. I've seen what vices have done to me. I've seen what it has done to other people. That is why I push my message. Now, whether people want to say it's biblical or it sounds spiritual is up for their interpretation. But it's very interesting because, I know in the Bible and the Quran and these religious texts that a lot of what I speak about is, mirrored within these ancient texts. And I believe, you have to read, obviously, the Quran and the Bible. I've read, to be honest, about a quarter of the Bible, and that was over 10 years ago. I have not read the Quran. I have not read other religious texts, and these are texts and teachings and readings that I want to get into, in the next year. But, I believe that these were baseline, guidelines for people back in the day. And as somebody who has wanted to live a very free life, I've seen what freedom does to a man. Freedom and having, the false belief that you can do anything, right? That you can lie, you can, be lustful, you can, be gluttonous, you can smoke, you can drink. These vices, these addictions will never lead you anywhere that you truly want to be in this life. I've partaked in a lot of vices in my life and a lot of bad habits. And I've seen the effects it's had on me. I've seen the effects that it has had on other people. And some of these other people have actually been Christians or religious people, right? And I teach what I teach because it is truly what I believe. Whether people want to say it's biblical or not, I will say this: I truly have a deep understanding of God, and whether you want to say the devil or evil, right? I believe in good and evil, and I've seen it and I've heard it. When I was in 8th grade, this is the craziest story that I'm going to share on this channel. When I was in 8th grade, I was in choir class, and I'll never forget it. I had an old friend who was very into the Bible back. This is like 14 years ago. And I remember that he would, read me the Bible during choir class because I was very interested in learning about God. And I was in this journey, this spiritual journey to just understand more about, a higher power, God, whatever you want to call it. And I remember we were in choir class, and he was reading about how, Jesus Christ would come back, and there would be like this trumpet or this sound of recognition, whatever the story is. And I kid you not, we were next to the band class, right? So, in band, they're playing, trumpets, trombones, tubas, and it's a very distinct noise, right? Like I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've heard of a trombone, a trumpet before, but there was this sound that it came from outside. And I kid you not, it sounded like it rang like across the entire world. It was this trumpet sound, right? And he was reading this passage from the Bible, and this trumpet sound came from outside, and it rang like it sounded like it was going across the entire world. Every single kid in that choir class, everybody ran to the window. And, this is public school and whatever, right? So it's like, everyone's like, oh shit, like we're gonna die and this and that. Everybody in that classroom could recognize that sound did not come from the band room, which was right down the hall. And I remember my friend, he was sitting there. We were just sitting there. We were the only two guys. This was a choir, all men's group, so it was about 25 people. We were the only two people that stayed seated. And he was very religious at the time, but he told me, he was like, when everybody stood up and they went to the window and they were saying all this crazy shit and we're gonna die and blah blah blah, this and that, he looked at me and he was like, you see these people, like they don't believe, right? And obviously, I was just learning about the whole thing. But I remember I got back home and I was asking my mom and I was asking, my friends, did you guys hear this like trumpet sound? It was at about maybe 11 a.m., 11:30 a.m. And it was just so loud and so grand. And nobody heard it, right? Now, whether you want to say that could have been whatever, right? I still don't know what it was to this day, but when I heard it, it sounded like something that was not of this world, right? And I don't know if that was a sign or it potentially could have been something, right? I've never heard a sound like that. But I've had experiences, like this where I've heard God even when, I've prayed, and it's a feeling. I can't really put my fingerprints on it, but it's something that I can feel. I've actually seen demons in real life. Like I've interacted with people who I believe have been possessed. Crazy story time, but I was staying at this Airbnb one time. This was about 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago now. I was renting out this room at the time. I got back home, and this lady, I was renting it out for a month, and she was a college professor at the University of Maryland in her mid-40s. I got back home, and back then I used to smoke weed. So, I would smoke in my car, and then I would go up to my room, right? I rented out this room at this Airbnb for a month. This was before I moved to California. And I smoked, and I started to walk to the driveway, and there was this shovel in the front yard with a sign on it, right? So I'm in the driveway, I'm reading the sign. It says, "Please do not feed the animals." So I'm reading it, and I'm like, that's strange. And the Ring camera turns on in the driveway, so I know I'm being watched, but I don't think anything of it. Now, this lady, again, she had shown some signs of being a little odd, but I tried to give grace, and just understand that she was in her mid 40s. She was a single woman renting out these 2 Airbnb rooms, so I try not to think anything of it. But I walk into the front door, and I'm going up to my room, and this lady sprints from her kitchen, comes to the stairwell, and starts screaming at me at the top of her lungs, saying, "You keep on spitting on my yard, and why are you trying to attack me?" And all this crazy. And it was the most crazy thing I've ever experienced. And I'm just standing there talking to this woman who is deranged and just out of control, screaming at me, thinking that I'm trying to attack her by spitting on her yard. Again, I used to smoke weed, so I would smoke in the car, and I was guessing, I guess I spit in the yard a couple times, something I was not thinking of at all. And, we're going for like 15, 20 minutes, and this lady is just going completely off, like saying I'm attacking her, saying how could I do this to her, and it was just so crazy. So I asked her, I'm like, "Hey, can you show me the footage on the Ring camera, because let me see what I did," because I was so confused. Like, I had no idea what was going on. So we go upstairs, and this lady is showing me, going on the yard. I did spit in the yard, right? Because I used to smoke weed. I spit in the yard, and she's pointing at me on the Ring camera. She was like, "Is that even you? That's not even you. That looks like the devil." And guys, I kid you not, right? I look at her in the eyes, and her eyes are yellow. Like, my whole body was completely frozen. Like, I couldn't move, right? And her eyes were like this yellow color, and my I could not move, and I was just, I understood that I was speaking to something else, and it was just so crazy. And she had a dog. The dog was very nice, and the dog was snarling from downstairs, looking like it wanted to attack me. And it was crazy. I used these psychological tricks, right, in the sense of I was agreeing with her. I was making sure that she was heard, and eventually she calmed down. Went downstairs. I went to my room. Obviously, I was in panic and I was freaked out, and I started to hear a whole bunch of noise in the garage happening. So I grabbed all of my stuff, and I went downstairs very carefully, right? And I have no idea what's happening. I don't know if I'm being set up. I don't know what's going on. I walk downstairs. I don't hear anything. I go to I open up the front door, right? And I was gonna tell her I'm taking a walk. I open up the front door, I'm looking around, I don't see anything. Guys, the shovel and the sign is gone, right? So she had gone through the garage, taken the shovel and the sign, and I guess left. And I'm walking to my car, looking around, making sure, I'm not being set up, and I get in my car and I leave. But, that was one of the craziest stories. And I really believe that whatever I was speaking to during that time was not of this earth, right? So I say all of this, and I've had a few other stories, not that crazy. That is the most wild encounter I've had with, I believe, an entity that was not of this earth. But I've had, a few other encounters with, I believe, demons or whatever you want to call it. But these creatures that, you can tell are not human. And they've been inside humans, right? And I'm not gonna come on here and say, "Oh, I've met like 50 of these motherfuckers." Like, it's only been a few, right? And the The other few times it wasn't this aggressive, but all in all to say, I believe in evil and good. I believe in God and in the devil. I believe, and this isn't even like a Christian base. This can be any type of religion, any type of base, but I truly believe in this, right? And this is where the basis of who I was, what I am now, and what I'm becoming, in my future, for my future. This is where it comes from, right? I've had experiences like the one I just told you about, and I can see the difference. I can see when you want to be free, and you think that freedom is free. You think that you're going to live a happy life. You think that once I can do whatever I want to do, and I'll be happy, I'll be fulfilled. But I found this to be completely not true. I found the opposite to be true. I found not only discipline, but having set standards for yourself in your life, right? Physically, training, the gym, working out, nutrition, working on your mindset, making sure your mentality is good, is strong, making sure you have a spiritual, side, something that you believe in that is past this world. Because, when you try to rely completely on yourself, you will fall. I truly believe that. When you try to rely on everything that is secular of this world, the exterior, the money, the status, the physique, the women, the cars, whatever it is, when you solely rely on this for who you are and what your identity is, I believe that you will fall. And I believe that this happens to a lot of people. I feel like a lot of people do not understand what I'm speaking about. And you can also be on the opposite side, where you could be so spiritually aligned and you could believe in God and you pray multiple times a day, but you're still poor and you don't take care of your health or your body. You don't try to move up in life. So what's the point of this, right? The point is that you need to have everything. You need to be physically fit. You need to be spiritually sound. You need to have a base of what you believe past the secular world. You need to be mentally strong. You need to be able to go through adversity. You are a man. You need status. You need to be recognized in this world. You can't just wake up every day and pray and pray and pray and think that something is going to happen. There has to be action. There has to be something to work towards. And, for me, I've always needed purpose. I've always needed something to live for and to strive for, right? And, in my early 20s, the external was very big, right? Attracting the women, getting jacked, getting a nice body, focusing on the nutrition. It was a lot of external. And I really started to neglect the internal. This is where the vices, the addictions came in. And again, I had to reach back into my, internal bag and understand that, I was severely lacking in this department. And whether you believe God is real or you don't, this is simply a framework that you can use to help your life. You don't have to be religious. You don't really even have to believe in God, but from my experience, I believe in God because I've seen enough proof that something exists past what we see, right? That is just my experience. Now, if you have not experienced anything like that or anything remotely close to that, then, you have a different experience. But this serves as my messaging, right? This is, why I believe in what I believe in, is that I believe there is good and there is evil in this world. in that, you know, if you don't have set standards, set morals for yourself, a set belief system for your entire life, right? This is in every aspect of your life, you know, with your body, your mind, your spirituality, your family, your friends, the way you treat people, like every single aspect of life. You know, you will feel shallow inside, and that's why I teach what I teach, right? Not only to have a great body, a great mind, but, you know, to destroy vices, to flee from lust, to, you know, not drink alcohol, you know, don't smoke weed, you know, stop scrolling so much on the phone, don't sports bet, don't gamble, don't be gluttonous, do not overeat. These same things, right? These same principles that are, you know, taught in the Bible, the Quran, right? In certain aspects. So yeah, you know, I wanted to share this message because, you know, a lot of what I teach is based off, you know, not only these teachings, but based off my experiences. And again, that freedom is truly not free. And my experience, you know, experiencing and wanting freedom so bad, it led to a lot of, you know, darkness and just chaos in my life. And, you know, I'm at a place now where I reject, you know, that side of me. And, you know, you don't have to be a monk, and I'm not telling you guys to never drink and never talk to women ever again. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that you guys have to protect yourself, and you have to, you know, have the awareness, the discernment to know what is right and what is wrong. And, you know, it takes time, right? And it is very, very difficult to be elite in every single aspect, but that is the purpose of life, is to improve in every single aspect of our lives every single day. I believe that is what the purpose of life is. So just wanted to drop, you know, this video and my belief in God, somebody that did not grow up religious at all. And yeah, this serves as a, you know, a basis of what I teach now, and, you know, just from my life experience. So hopefully you guys found it valuable. You know, let me know if you guys have any questions, comments. Feel free to DM me on Instagram or send me an email. I would love to respond to some questions for the next video. This is John the Only. I'm sending blessings always. Peace.